this very elementary quantum system, namely magnetic monopoles. So, you are here. Oh, you brought him along. Yes. Okay. All right. Okay. So, what we want to do is to see how the treat this system from a Lagrangian framework. Okay. So, by way of notation, what we have is some, say, magnetic monopole, a charge G here, E here. So, you are looking at the relative coordinate x, and we are writing Eg over 4 pi is some n. Okay. So, in this case, so let me by way of program, I will finish this, but maybe I can go quickly with this, okay. And then I will do Chern-Simons on a disk, okay, which involves, in my opinion, really new concepts of utility, broad utility. Okay. But here also, let us see how it works. Okay. So, here let us look at the classical equations of motion. So, here the classical equations are given by the Lorentz force equation, right? E times V cross B. So, this in my notation is n epsilon I j k. I think x, I will look at, I want the factors, right? Yeah, x j x k dot over r cube, where r is the modulus of this distance. Okay. Now, this is the right hand side is just the Lorentz force term, where the magnetic field is of the monopole is G times x over r squared, the magnetic field. Okay. So, you write E cross B, you get this. Now, this is fairly remarkable equation. Why? Implies, if I look as r times x hat dot x hat I, this equation says m r double dot is equal to, it separates nicely, well, I think even the m is not necessary. R double dot is r times summation x hat I dot squared. Okay. Then it says ddt of epsilon I j k x j m x k dot plus next term n times x hat I is 0. Okay. This I will call as Ji. So, this equation 1, this equation 2, this is coming from here by substituting this here and looking at the components. And the remarkable thing is, one is same, okay, as of a free particle. Two is the remarkable thing. 2, okay, involves conserved angular momentum Ji, okay, but this is not equal to orbital angular momentum, not equal to orbital angular momentum. orbital which would have been equal to m times, okay, x cross x hat dot x dot, right, r cross p. This would have been the classical free particle angular momentum, but that it is not this. There is an extra helicity in particular. So this would be orbital. Okay. So in particular, what is interesting is x hat dot j, okay, is n is not equal to x hat dot l, which is 0. The orbital case, this equation is identity, correct, this one, but here it is not the case, there is an n here. So this equation here, the fact that there is a helicity along the line joining the particle to the monopole is of fundamental importance. Okay, you will see that this particular feature, by the way, is also shared by the photon or massless particle with helicity, but in the momentum space. Okay, there is some duality between monopoles and massless particles. Okay, is the one which is going to cause all topological complications. Okay, so how will I describe this in the Hamiltonian formulation? Is as usual very easy. This is easier than the Lagrangian formulation, because here I can choose the Hamiltonian to be 1/2, let me write it in this way, okay, velocity dot square, and I will give you Poisson brackets, okay, between the coordinates, between the velocities. Okay. So I will say that the Poisson bracket of xi with xj, xi with xj is 0. I will say xi with bj is 1/m delta ij, but I will say vi with vj, okay, is 1/m squared times the magnetic field, which I will write down, okay, times with a minus sign. There is a minus sign, minus 1/m squared times n times epsilon ijk xk over r cube. Now you should remember one thing. Okay, we remove x equal to 0 from configuration space. Because otherwise this equation is not defined. Okay, but this is highly problematic in quantum mechanics. Okay, you cannot do remove points. Okay, so what does it mean quantum mechanically? So in quantum mechanics, let me show you some. You cannot remove, because we are dealing with Hilbert spaces. There is no meaning in removing points, okay, because the Hilbert space does not care about points. Okay. So what does it mean? Now let me remark on a very peculiar phenomenon which already happens here. Okay. Suppose I put this monopole here, okay, then I will shoot the charge like this towards the monopole. Okay. Then the component of angular momentum, okay, in the direction of motion, okay, for this is my incident electron, for incident electron, okay, component of angular momentum in direction of motion, okay, if this is direction of motion, it depends, okay, in direction say minus, okay, direction joining, we put it like this, G to E is equal to, from this equation, N. Right? From here, if I look at this component of J in this direction, okay, I will be dotting this the unit vector there. This is the unit vector from G to E, so I will get N. Okay. But the electron experience for this motion, but classically, okay, since if the motion is like this, okay, since electron experiences no force, right, this term, the force term, in the equation of motion you had this epsilon ijk xj dot xk over r cube, right. So here position and velocity are parallel, so there is no force. So the electron will go right through classically on this other side. It will go through the monopole and emerge on the other side. But after it has emerged, and will go through G monopole. Right? But after it has emerged, so initially the component angular momentum, okay, J in this direction is equal to N. Right? Now after, what happens, J in this direction is equal to N, right? That means angular momentum is not conserved, okay, okay, but helicity flips. Implying, okay, J not conserved. So you see, so already classically there is a trouble, okay, because, well, you can see what I mean. So if you want to maintain conservation of angular momentum, you have to remove these trajectories, okay. I mean, you cannot just remove a point, because if you remove a point, even classically there is a problem, because I can shoot the electron directly towards the monopole, okay, then there is a problem. So you have to remove all these trajectories pointing towards that thing, okay. So it becomes very quickly very complicated problem, okay. Quantum mechanically this is resolved by in totally different way by domains of operators, okay. But this is this problem which eventually re-emerges much later, which we will not discuss, as what is called the Rubakov, what is it, monopole induced proton decay. You might have heard about the monopole induced proton decay, the Rubakov-Kalin effect, okay, in grand unified theories. You might have heard. It is this problem which gets more and more elaborated, and eventually I think C.N. Yang and I think it is Yang who discovered that this is causing some problem in the presence of some magnetic moment type terms, okay, in the Hamiltonian, and then Rubakov and then Kalin elaborated on this, okay, in the grand unified context. So it is this little problem that gets elaborated. But anyway, I want to go back here. So this now the main problem is that so the Hamiltonian formulation is easy. Classically, if you want to treat this classically, and you really want to, you may say mumble about trajectories having measure 0 and so on, whatever that may mean. Okay, but yet you cannot look at these trajectories in the charge monopole system without losing conservation of angular momentum. Okay, this does not happen quantum mechanically. So claim. Okay, with configuration space okay, Q, this is R3 with the origin removed, because I am removing the origin in order that the Poisson brackets make sense. There exists no PIQJ, QIPJ, so XIPJ on, let me put on phase space I will call it T star Q, okay, such that Xi Pj is delta Ij, etc. Okay. This I will not, I can prove this, but it is much, but the reason for this is the following. Okay, reason. If there had existed okay, a vector potential A such that, okay, let us say curl away epsilon ij k dj a k is my magnetic field, okay, which let me call it G, my magnetic field epsilon ij k, I think xj xk dot, I am not sure of my signs, over R cube. Is it dimension is correct? Magnetic field is 1 over R squared, no? Epsilon ij, I am not writing it correctly. The magnetic field is curl, it should be xk, magnetic field is this, sorry. Now there is only one index, no, xj, I am getting confused now. So what is the magnetic field? Magnetic field is xi over, no, it should be 1 over R cubed, 1 over R squared, no, xi over R cubed. Okay. So I want to develop this here. Yes, it is just this. This should be xi over R cubed. If it had existed, then I could have solved the problem. Okay, we would set mass times the velocity as pi minus eai and find, right, these pi's will commute, no, and find, okay, that, and find the pi. Because this is the standard momentum that comes in the presence of an electromagnetic field. Okay. But okay, one has no solution, okay, on R3 the complement of R3 with an origin. This has no solution because one can see this in many different ways. Okay. This is a standard problem because you have the monopole of the origin. You integrate B dot ds on S2, right? I am not doing anything. So this is from this equation G up to 4 pi. Maybe there is no 4 pi, I don't care about that. But on the other side, what will get? This is a integral on S2 of dA would be 0 if A existed. Okay. This is a standard proof, so A should have at least one singularity. Okay, and this is the Dirac string. Okay, so A has to be singular. Singular means ill-defined. Okay. At some point, okay, say R n hat, the sphere radius is R, okay, on S2. Some point here, which you can choose at will. So this is some unit vector, but this is true for all R. So vary R, okay, from vary R to get a singular line. Okay, this is called the Dirac string. So this, if you will not be able to find it this A. If you try solving this equation, you can. If you try solving this equation, you will be obliged to remove a string, which you can put anywhere you like. Okay. So there will be some Dirac string. All along the string, this thing is singular. Okay. So our enterprise fails. So I cannot find global coordinates Q and P. So I don't know. Okay. I don't know how to make Legendre transform and pass to the Hamiltonian. Okay. So to the Lagrangian. So can't make Legendre transform. To find Lagrangian. Okay. So what do I do? So I will write the Lagrangian directly, but still there exists a Lagrangian, okay, but not on Q, but on the what we had already discussed, U1 bundle. Okay, here the bundle space will be, let me call it Q hat. Okay, it's not Q. The coordinates of this will be R and S. Okay, R will go from 0 to infinity, but excluding the origin, and S will be an element of SU2. Okay, and again our unit vector. Okay, this S has an extra degree of freedom. So SU shall be defined, the unit vector as S sigma 3 S inverse. Okay. This is similar to the bundle we defined for a spin. In that case we had the spin where this is the crucial step, the exclusion of the origin. What will happen is, so on each 2 sphere, just like in the spin case, I go to the U1 bundle, which is the 3 sphere or SU2. Okay. But if you try extending this bundle to the origin, you will be in trouble. Okay. It will become undefined because the sphere will disappear, right? It will shrink to 0. So that will be a singular point. So it has to be excised from the manifold if you want smooth objects. Okay. So this is quite similar to what we did for the spin case. So what is a Lagrangian? Okay, sorry. Yeah, it will be half m x dot square. I'll repeat plus. Now I will put in trace sigma 3 S inverse S dot. Okay. Now here we can write x to understand what is happening. I can write this x as r times x hat. Okay. So x dot is r dot x hat plus r x hat dot. Okay. So x hat dot x dot squared is r dot squared, but the cross term is 0. I'll tell you, plus r squared x hat dot squared, since by differentiating the normalization, that is x hat dot x hat is equal to 1 implies x hat dot is 0. Okay. Now I put it here just to understand this Lagrangian. It is nothing but half m r dot squared plus 1/2 m r squared, okay, times x hat dot squared. But now this x hat should be thought of as a function of s, right? And I make ddt of this x hat dot squared plus this term in trace sigma 3 S inverse S dot. Why did I write like this? Variation of R will give you the standard free equation. This is what we want. Okay. Variation of R gives, okay, the free equation, which you can read off, right? Which will be R double dot is equal to, I think, R times x hat dot squared, if I am not wrong. Yes, okay, which you can read from here. Now, when we vary the unit vector, I should really vary S. Okay, so variation of S. So here I am varying S. Okay, so I will make a variation like this: delta S is equal to I epsilon alpha sigma alpha over 2 S. Okay, I am very carefully varying on the right here. Okay, which should give me angular momentum. Is an infinitesimal rotation on the x hat. Okay, is, as we have seen, is a infinitesimal rotation on of x hat. So it will give from the first term I will get the standard angular momentum 1/2 of m, okay, x hat x r cross dot x dot epsilon alpha dot, this is alpha, times d epsilon alpha time derivative, because the equation of motion for a free particle is the statement that orbital angular momentum is conserved, but there will be an additional term plus in trace sigma 3, okay. But notice that if epsilon alpha were time independent, they will cancel in the middle, okay. So I need only worry about the epsilon alpha dot term. So it is going to be equal to, let me put like this, times epsilon alpha dot term trace sigma 3. So here there is an I epsilon I sigma 3, okay, S inverse sigma alpha over 2 S times epsilon alpha dot, okay. Yes, there is a sign, I have not been careful about signs. So this is 1/2 m x cross x dot alpha x dot alpha epsilon alpha dot minus I squared is minus, then I have, there are too many sigma, there is no too many sigma 3s I have put, sorry, one sigma 3 too many is here, trace sigma 3, this sigma 3 is not there, okay. So minus trace sigma 3 times S, so I can write like this, S sigma 3 S inverse sigma alpha over 2 times epsilon alpha dot. Yes, this is the extra contribution. This is sigma dot x hat, and I am projecting with the sigma alpha over 2. So the last term up to signs, I have not been careful about signs, okay. So it is equal to m x cross x dot alpha minus n times this unit vector x alpha hat dot times epsilon alpha dot. So, okay. So this is exactly, this is ddt, so implies ddt of j alpha is 0 up to this sign, which you somewhere some sign mistake is happening. I could have taken this variation to be with a negative sign, I am not remembering, okay. Okay. So I have, anyway the important thing is I have reproduced the conservation law, but this extra variable is there. In particular, okay, there is a gauge invariance. Namely, if I changes by something on the other side, namely I trace, I vary this by say sigma 3, yeah, sigma 3 over 2 times some epsilon dot epsilon, I am trying to take this extra term and I am changing it on the other side. The delta x, but delta x will be 0 because x hat was the conjugate, because of the fact that you remember that x hat dot sigma was S sigma 3 G S inverse, right. So, if I vary this on this side, what will happen is that you will get a commutator of this sigma 3 with sigma 3, which is 0 in the middle. This is infinitesimal variation. So, this implies delta x hat is 0. But this term on the other hand, this term here again, so delta L, for the first term I get nothing. For the second term, if I do not differentiate epsilon, again by cyclicity of the thing it will vanish, because it will commute to this. So, it will come from I n trace sigma 3, okay, S inverse S times this variation, this is an I sigma 3 over 2 epsilon dot, right. Right. So, this is equal to minus n epsilon dot. So, what this is saying is that the right rotation, implying right rotation on S, call it J or let us say J3 on right, acting on S on the right, is equal to, is constrained by this equation, so is equal to minus n. So, that is weakly equal to, this is a constraint. So, I am getting an equation like J3 right plus n is weakly 0. Again, I have not been, I am noticing that I am consistently getting an extra minus sign, never mind. So, the right rotation is a constraint. So, it is a first class constraint. There are no other constraints, but it is saying that in the wave functions, when I make a rotation on the right, the left rotation is a physical rotation, that is the one which rotates x, but on the right this is the thing that defines the bundle and it is fixed by this n. So, it is acting on the right of, so on wave functions, so on wave functions which will now be psi. So, there will be functions on this q hat to complex numbers. So, wave functions will be psi will be some r of s, r and s, this will be complex number. What this is saying is that when I act on the right, psi r, if I rotate here, I have rotated s, where is it? If I rotate this times exponential I sigma 3 over 2 some times some epsilon, this will come out as psi of r s times exponential minus n I n epsilon. This is acting on the right, this is angular momentum in the spin half representation, and I get minus n because of this equation here. Oh, I know, it is actually this should be, there is some, it should be, because J3 is acting on the right, so it is acting with the right operators have an extra minus sign, so this should be anyway plus, let me fix that. The other minus sign I do not know. So, this is acting on the right, so this operator is coming with a plus. because it is acting on the wrong side of S, it is going in, sorry, that's not right. No, I'm making mistakes. Sorry about that. No, I'm sorry about the science, but it doesn't matter so much, but still I am little bothered. So anyway, this is what has happened. Okay? That is, the wave functions, there is a gauge invariance, and the gauge invariance saying is that the wave functions are of this character. I will write the Hamiltonian in a minute. Okay? It is coming because the Lagrangian here has this extra term, and that is giving you this constraint, which is a first class constraint. There is only one constraint in this problem. Okay? Unlike in this spin case, there is only one constraint. So what does this mean? Right? Psi Rs. Now this can be always expanded by standard activity group theory, that this is can be written as some functions of J, okay, then some indices, let me call it M and N, okay. These are functions of R times dj Mn of S. So these are dj, okay, gives 2j plus 1 dimensional IRR of SU2, okay, angular momentum J. This is the analog of the spherical YLM functions, but the what is it called, Peter-Weyl theorem, you can always do this. Okay. Now what is this equation say? The constraint says, no, dj Mn S exponential I sigma 3 over 2 epsilon is dj Mn of S times exponential, I should write, let me call it M prime times exponential I M prime epsilon. So let me call this as M prime. Okay. Just to not to confuse with that N. This is a property of all these rotation matrices, so implies M prime equal to N. Okay. To fulfill the constraints, first class constraints, namely the right angular momentum around third axis is fixed, you are finding that, so the wave functions psi Rs are can be written as Fj some M n, but n is fixed, so M and J I am integrating or summing times this is a function of R times dj M n of S. Okay. So I got the wave functions. I can write the Hamiltonian out by Legendre transform, but never mind, I will come to the Hamiltonian in a minute. This is already very interesting. First thing it says is, implies now, if J is integer, say, now we know that this N can only take values from minus J to plus J. Right? This N here is a fixed number, but for a given J it can only this. So A, N is quantized. we fix n, if n is fixed, okay, to some integer value, okay, to be integer, then I think j should be less than or equal to mod n, an integer, because if j were, because the maximum value of n is j, okay, so if you fix this n, the modulus of n will give you a lower bound on j, then you have to sum. So the summation here will be like this, okay. So the psi rs will be summed with j larger than or equal to mod n, okay. Then I sum over the possible values for given j of f j m n of r times d j m n of s. So we have got the fact that this classical object with charge times monopole, which was not quantized as the classical thing, is getting quantized here. Secondly, okay, in this case, so furthermore it says, okay, in this case, okay, the particle is half integral, is bosonic. Is tensorial. That means its angular momentum is integral. Okay, I have not proved statistics, so I will call it tensorial. Okay. Secondly, okay, you could also have, if j, if n is half integral, which also you can have, we get the particle is, by similar arguments, is spinorial. So you will get spin half objects or integral spin objects depending on the choice of n. Okay. So this is showing, as I told you earlier, that you might have composites of both of perfectly tensorial objects quantum mechanically, and the composite can be spinorial. Here is an example. Okay. There is nothing wrong, and it contradicts the what you read in books, which says that if you put integer spin angular momentum, you will only get integer spin. It is not correct. Okay. The composite system of E and G, yeah, the composite system of E and G has this property. Okay. In the quantum mechanics, you don't remove anything. So, what is a Hilbert space? Hilbert space will be, say, psi chi will be 0 to infinity, okay, dr r, r square dr, r square. Okay, times you take, well, I will be very strict, I take psi star chi, psi star of s chi of s, but this is a function on the sphere, okay, depends on unit vector. So I integrate here with the volume form d omega of x hat on the 2 sphere. Okay. So here I have not removed anything. Okay. If you check what is happening more deeply, something is happening. All these wave functions that I am writing here will be obliged to vanish at the origin, okay, when they are in the domain of the Hamiltonian. Okay. So the operator theory domains get linked up with topological issues. I mean, they one is intimately linked to the other, but when you complete the Hilbert space you get everything. Okay. So you have not removed anything. You can do the scattering we were talking about, and you will see that at this level there is no problem. Okay. I mean, what do I mean by scattering right through the origin? You have to create a wave packet and look for forward scattering. Okay. That's what you have to do, right? And nothing much, there is the forward scattering cross section becomes infinite, okay? But there is no problem with conservation of angular momentum, okay? But the cross section becomes infinite. I will show you some very interesting things here.
So in the classical picture you have the Dirac string, right? So like if you want to take the classical limit of the set, try to get the Dirac string, how do you see that?
No, there is no string or anything. I mean, that is a mystification of the treatment. Okay.
Enhance the configuration space of the human bundle.
Right. The wave function has that e power minus ions.
There is no problem. Okay. It's just that when Dirac, by the way, did not talk about strings. That was a later.
So this first class constraints represent just one constraint.
There is only one constraint in this case.
Gauge transformation.
That is a U1 gauge transformation in this case, because the spin case there was no kinetic energy term for the spin. Okay. Here there are terms coming from the kinetic energy term from X hat, making them the second class constraints of the pure system into no longer constraints. Okay. So it is much simpler in that way. Okay. But this is a good example where the topological issues get mingled with operator theoretic issues. Okay.
So the usual way we think about the Dirac string in terms of the human gauge bundle, we have two patches and then the
Yes.
gauge vector.
Ah.
So if the particle coupled to that system, would I ignore the first Lagrangian I wrote, or I would write the
If you want to take sections of this bundle, see here, that comes from here. This S is living on the SU2 or the U1 bundle. Now, if you want, you can write this object by taking two sections on S2, fix the gauge on one and other, and you will get a transition function. Okay. You can write this in that way. I will take this object and I will write psi in the north pole, psi in the south pole with the transition function. Likewise for the other one. But when you compute this thing, this transition function disappears and I am back here. Okay. Okay. So this is much simpler way of viewing the situation than taking sections. Okay. So I should write the Hamiltonian out in this case. Okay. It is somewhere I have written down.
So you have considered particle coupled to the time
Huh?
You have considered the simplest possible particle coupled to the monopole.
Yeah.
Is it the most amount of complexity that occurs in this problem, or it will couple something else?
In this case, this last statement I do not know what you mean. I mean, if you put, what I remember is, here my memory is not so strong.
So I'll tell you what I mean. So instead of having a charged particle,
Hmm.
I would have the complex scalar coupled to the background equation.
Oh, there is no problem, because you can second quantize this damn thing, because you have got the modes here, right? So you use these modes to write creation annihilation operators, and you can write the second quantized wave function for the electron moving in the monopole field. Of course, you will have only rotational invariance. Okay, but you can then couple that thing with something. You have particle creation. Everything can be done.
And with single particle, you said some of them can have spin half. Like I have multiple particles, like change them. With single particles, so you said you can have spin half.
Yes.
I suppose that feature survives even if I had several particles.
Yes. So you can ask questions of statistics, which is more interesting, right? So suppose I took two spin half particles. I mean, for example, okay, suppose I take two spin half particles in this monopole field, okay, or rather take two bosons. Most interesting thing is G, okay, and you take E1 and E2. so that E1g and E2g are both half integral. Okay. Now in this composite system, okay, what will happen, for example, if I exchange E1 with E2, do you get +1 or -1? Okay. It is not obvious. In fact, the nature of the bundle in this case, because you have one bundle here and you have another bundle here, okay, and you want this, there are problems when these come close because of the Coulomb ripple. There are singularities from Coulomb potential and so on. No? This has been treated in, I would say, a positively brilliant paper by Friedman and Sorkin. They were involved in this kind of thing long ago, but they did treat n of these objects they took. In fact, what they did is not this, I should say, what they did was something like this. They took E1 G1, E2 G2, and several of these. Okay. Each of them constituents are all tensorial, but this is spin half, this is spin half, maybe some of them are spin integral and so on. Okay. Then they studied this whole configuration, this whole bundle structure of this system, and tried to see what will happen if I try to exchange adiabatically transport one around the other, and they got a -1 in the fermionic case. It's not at all obvious. In fact, I cannot reproduce the proof here. I have to go and check the paper. No? So the spin statistics theorem, I mean, normal spin statistics uses quantum field theory and Poincare invariance, but there is another version which involves adiabatic transports, which we will come to later. They use that second technique, and they were able to prove that the spin statistics theorem is intact.
So the n, which is integral of B over S2 that you started with, does it play any role in this
Proof.
exchange of two particles?
Yes. It comes you get a phase which involves the product of these n's, okay, exponential I pi times n1 times n2 or something like that. That gives you plus or minus when you transport one around the other. Okay, not product, you exchange one with the other. Okay, yeah, it won't be. It is that kind of argument, but they did it in 3 dimensions, which is much harder. Okay. This is not a flat bundle. In 3 dimensions, it's not a flat bundle. The connection is non-trivial. You can see because of the phase. So you have to take care of the phase in a careful way, which they did. So no unusual quantum field theory emerges, okay, violating known principles, but something strange does happen, that composites of tensorial objects become spinorial. Okay. Now I want to finish by noticing the following fact. So next time next Monday I will do Chern-Simons. So I want to finish this, okay, but I want to show you this thing, that if I plot the differential cross section, so this is theta, this is 0 forward direction, and you go to backward direction. So this is theta is a scattering angle, right? So I have a monopole here, and this one is coming like this and going like this. Okay, this electron coming, and this is my scattering angle. Okay. Now this cross section is very remarkable. There is certainly an infinity at the here, the forward direction. That comes from the Coulomb fact that the particle is able to pass right through. But then comes the surprise. There are a sequence. This is classical. This is classical. You get a sequence of infinities, and they accumulate. Yeah? So there is an accumulation. This is an accumulation point. So it becomes more and more infinite. This is a classical situation using impact parameters, and you get a sequence graph like this, and you get infinity, infinity, infinity. It goes on and on and on, and they accumulate in the backward direction classically. Okay. Now if you try to see what happens quantum mechanically, forward direction exists, but all these singularities, okay, quantum theory eliminates these singularities. Yeah. Yes. Just use impact. You have a dp. There is a fixed target, and you have the impact parameter, and there is a way to compute cross section by taking a small volume initially and see how it expands, and taking a derivative. Okay. So it is given in terms of the classical action evaluated on the trajectory and some Van Vleck determinant. They all diverge. Okay. This is well known. Very funny, but when you go into quantum theory, all of them go away except forward. Quantum mechanically, only the first one remains. Why it happens? Because when you these infinities have their origin in the semi. At this, what happens is that the second derivative. This is my recollection. If you try doing this is originally notation will exist, but at this point they vanish. So you have to go to the cubic approximation, and you end up with getting area functions. And if you look at the properties of the area function, there is no singularity. Okay, but if you don't mind that, if you don't go to that next approximation, do the calculation earlier, you get infinity. So the quantum corrections, quantum mechanics is actually much smoother than the classical thing. It eliminates singularities, okay, because the numerator upstairs, okay, if the s becomes too large, infinity, there is some they don't contribute to the function integral in some sense. Okay. This is one of the I would say remarkable physical effects which come in the charge monopole system. This was noticed already by Wheeler and somebody else, and later we were trying to understand the semi-classical calculations, and we were, after a lot of trouble, able. He did angular momentum analysis, Wheeler.
In the classical case, if you just remove a region, put a hard wall.
There is no singularity. No. Okay. If you put a hard wall, you have to tell what happens to the trajectory when it hits the wall, but there is no singularity. There is some, I know, these singularities are caused by what they call rainbows and glories. You know, if you, I think, you know what, there are these conjugate points. If you take a how do you go? If you give me an initial point and you give me a final point, okay, and give the energy, okay, and I think time of passage, normally there is a unique trajectory, but at some point you get many trajectories coming here, more than one trajectory coming. In fact, the standard example is a garden hose. If you put things this at the same point, there many things will come and hit. Okay, so there are focal points. Okay. The focal points are exactly where the double derivative or the action vanishes along the classical trajectory. Okay, and these are called focal points, and they are what are called. When you cross the focal point, it is a big problem on how to handle the phases, and there are this Maslov index. You might have come across this also. Okay, you have to put some phase. In optics, they use it all the time. Okay, so these are coming from these focal points, and they are classified by these phrases like rainbows, I don't know, glories. The example I remember is this garden hose example. Okay, and people doing stationary phase approximation, and it's topological. For example, people doing what is it called? Dustermaat-Heckmann theorem. You must have heard about it, no? Where the second variation gives the exact answer. Okay, you know this. Yeah? There, this kind of consideration comes in a strong way. So, anyway, this is something to remember, that classical mechanics, quantum mechanics, is much richer than what is taught in textbooks. Okay. I don't know why these are suppressed, but they are suppressed. Okay. Okay, next time I will go to Chern-Simons, and then I do want to do this higher dimensional type actions, which was popularized, which Wessel Zumino wrote, then Ed Witten used. Partly it's good to know, partly I want to advertise that we did it much before. Okay. Okay. But anyway, we did not do it for quantum field theory, but we knew it, and but we did it for the charge monopole. Then we went to something else. So I'll do that next time.